The first thing that hit the courtroom wasn't his voice, Dot. It was his laughter. Sharp, cocky, bouncing off the walls like it owned them. He walked in before his name was even called. Designer sneakers too clean for the scuffed floor. Stethoscope hanging around his neck like jewelry, not a tool. White coat slung over his shoulder, not because he needed it, but because he knew what it said. I belong somewhere you don't. He didn't wait for the bailiff. Didn't look at the clerk. He walked straight toward the front, like this was his hospital, not a small televised courtroom. Let's speed this up, he said, dropping into the defendant's chair without being told. Some of us actually save lives. The gallery went still. On the bench, Judge Grant didn't move. Early 60s, composed, eyes so sharp they felt like scalpels. The kind of judge whose silence felt louder than other people shouting. The bailiff stepped forward. Sir, you stand when— It's fine, bailiff, Judge Grant said calmly. Let him sit. It's educational to see how people behave when they think the rules don't apply. The young man smirked. Bouncing his knee, Dot in the back row, a nurse in scrubs whispered. That's him. At the plaintiff's table, a woman in a simple blouse sat with her fingers locked so tight around a pen it looked like it might snap. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, the way nurses wear it when they've worked too. Many nights in a row, she wasn't wearing her badge today, Dot, because she didn't have one anymore. Calling case of Reyes v. Hawley, the clerk announced. Parties, please stand. The nurse stood so fast her chair wobbled. Dot, the doctor's son, didn't move. The bailiff's hand hovered near his arm. Mr. Hawley, Judge Grant said, voice flat. When the clerk asks you to stand, you stand. In this courtroom, your legs work the same as everyone else's. He rolled his eyes, but got up slowly, like it cost him something. State your full name for the record, she said. Ethan Hawley, he replied, as if she should already know. Surgical resident, Harding Memorial Hospital. And your relation to Dr. Richard Hawley? She asked. Dot, his chin lifted. He's my father, chief of surgery. He basically runs. I asked your relation, she cut in. Not his, resumed. Sit. A ripple of muffled laughter died quickly as her gaze swept the room. She turned to the woman at the plaintiff's table. Your name? She asked, softer. Maria Reyes, the nurse said. Former ICU nurse at Harding Memorial. The word former punched the air out of her chest for a second. She swallowed it. You brought this case, Judge Grant said. Do you understand you're under oath? Yes, Your Honor, Maria said, her accent faint but steady. I do. Tell me, the judge said. What happened? Maria took a breath that looked like it hurt. I worked at Harding for 7 years, she began. ICU nights, mostly. I loved my job. I loved my patients. I never had a disciplinary write-up. Not once. Ethan snorted. The judge's eyes flicked toward him, then back to Maria. 2 months ago, Maria continued, I was assigned to a post-op patient. Complicated abdominal surgery. High risk. The attending was Dr. Harper. The resident on the case was— Her throat tightened. Dr. Ethan Hawley. He smiled faintly, like he was enjoying the promo. The surgery finished late, Maria said. The patient came to ICU, unstable. We were short-staffed. I took him, plus 2 other criticals. I did my best to keep all 3 alive. Her fingers tightened on the pen. At 3 a.m., his blood pressure dropped suddenly. I paged Dr. Harper. No answer. I paged Dr. Hawley. No answer. I paged rapid response. And then? Judge Grant prompted. He crashed, Maria said quietly. We did everything. CPR, meds, shocks. He didn't come back. The gallery shifted. The wordless ache of anyone who's ever lost someone in a hospital overnight. Later that morning, Maria went on. I was called into my manager's office. Archer was there, so was— She glanced briefly at Ethan. Dr. Hawley. He watched her like she was a mildly interesting case study. They told me, she said, a family member had complained that I ignored the monitor alarms. That I was on my phone while their father was dying. That I failed to page the doctors. That I falsified charting to cover it. Her voice shook on that last sentence. I never— She blinked hard. I never did that. I did exactly what I've done for years. But the complaint had my name on every line, in detail, and whose name wasn't on it? Judge Grant asked. His, Maria said, nodding toward Ethan, even though he was the resident. Even though he never answered the page? The judge's gaze slid to Ethan. You're telling me, she said, you weren't mentioned in the complaint at all? He shrugged. Because I wasn't at fault. I was post-call. Off duty, she knew that. She should have escalated. Maria turned, incredulous. We paged you, Ethan, the pager log, Ms. Reyes, the judge said. You'll speak to the bench, not to him. Maria dragged her eyes back. They told me, she said. They had to protect the hospital, that if this went to court, my record would destroy our case. That if I resigned quietly, they'd help me find another position elsewhere. If I fought it, they'd terminate me with cause and report me to the board. So you resigned, Judge Grant said. I begged them to check the monitors, the call logs, the camera. Maria said, tears finally welling. They said it was out of their hands. The complaint was solid. The family was devastated. She pulled a folded sheet from her bag with trembling fingers. They made me sign this, she said. A statement that I was stepping down due to personal stress. The bailiff brought it up. Judge Grant read it silently, her jaw tightening. At what point, she asked. Did you learn that the family complaint never came from the family? The room went dead quiet. Ethan's eyes flicked up. Startled for the first time, Maria's hand stopped shaking. 2 weeks later, she said, voice low, I ran into the patient's daughter at the grocery store. I hid. I was ashamed. But she saw me. She came over. She cried. She said, I'm so sorry they fired you. Maria swallowed hard. I asked her why she complained, she said. I told her I understood. That grief makes people angry. She looked confused. She said, we didn't complain about you. We complained about the doctor who never showed up. The gallery erupted in murmurs. She said, Maria finished. They wrote a letter directly to Dr. Harper and the chief of surgery. She said your name. Her eyes flicked to Ethan. She said Ethan, not mine. Judge Grant folded the resignation form slowly. Ms. Reyes, she said, who is the chief of surgery at Harding Memorial? Maria's voice went quiet. Dr. Richard Hawley, she whispered. His father. The judge leaned back. Her gaze shifted from the paper to Ethan to the cameras, slow and deliberate. So, she said softly, the family blamed the doctor who didn't answer. But the complaint that destroyed a nurse just happened to rewrite the story. She tapped the file once with her pen, and the man holding the red pen, she added, just happened to be his dad. Tell me something, if the person who controls your career is also the one rewriting what really happened, would you trust the system to protect you? Or would you walk away quietly to save yourself? Think about that, because what comes next proves exactly how much a powerful last name can do to the truth. Asterisk. Your Honor, this is absurd, Ethan said, sitting forward. She's spinning some conspiracy because she got fired. People die in ICU, that's reality. We can't drag every loss into a courtroom. No, Judge Grant agreed. Just the ones where the story doesn't match the paperwork. She lifted another sheet from the file in front of her. This, she said, is the official incident report filed with the hospital. It blames Ms. Reyes for failure to escalate and claims there was no evidence of any pages to the on-call resident. She looked at him. You signed this as the resident of record, she said. Did you read it? He smirked. We sign dozens of forms a week. Risk management handles the language. We just acknowledge. So you signed a report saying no page was sent, she said, without checking a single log. That's not my job, he shot back. I'm a doctor, not IT. Someone in the back scoffed. Judge Grant ignored it. Clerk, she said. Put Exhibit 5 on the monitor. The screen blinked to life with a familiar grid. The digital pager logged out rows of timestamps and names. Ms. Reyes, the judge said. Point to your pages to Dr. Hawley. Maria stood, moving closer, finger hovering just short of the glass. There, she said. 257, 301, 306, Alto ID, 4729. That's his code. And the code matches? The judge asked asterisk Dr. Ethan Hawley. The clerk read from a list. Resident pager assignments. 4,729. The room exhaled. Ethan stiffened. Those could have been misrouted, he said quickly. Our system glitches. Everyone knows that. Convenient. Judge Grant murmured. She pointed to another column. And this receipt column? She asked. Shows when the page is acknowledged. I see nothing beside 4,729. She tapped the screen lightly. You didn't answer? She said. He lifted his chin. I was post-call. I wasn't supposed to be reachable. She knew who the attending was. Attending's pager. The judge asked asterisk 4,682. Maria said. The next row down lit up. There, the clerk said. 258, 302, 305, all to 4,682. And this column? The judge asked. Receipts, the clerk said. All blank. None acknowledged. So, Judge Grant said casually. The nurse paged both doctors repeatedly. Neither answered. Yet the report you signed says no pages were sent. She let that hang between them. Care to explain? She asked. Ethan shifted in his chair. Asterisk, like I said, he muttered. I took glitches. Risk rewrites. I'm being dragged for trusting the system you're so obsessed with. A woman in scrubs near the back shook her head, whispering, he never answers nights. Everyone knows. Judge Grant's eyes flicked to the side benches. Is there anyone from Harding Memorial present today? She asked. A man in a suit, HR polished but nervous, stood reluctantly. Name and position. She said. Daniel Cho, he said. Assistant Director, Human Resources. Harding Memorial. Mr. Cho, she said. Did you participate in the meeting where Ms. Reyes was asked to resign? He shifted. Yes, Your Honor. Did you tell her the complaint came from the patient's family? She asked. He glanced at Ethan, then away. Yes, he admitted. Was that true? She asked. He hesitated. Every nurse in the gallery held their breath. No, he said quietly. The family letter named Dr. Harper and Dr. Ho, not Ms. Reyes. A low murmur swept the room. Then who put her name on the internal complaint? Judge Grant asked. Risk management? And Dr. Hall Sr. signed off, he said. He suggested focusing on nursing process gaps to reduce legal exposure. And the son? She asked. Was he involved? Daniel swallowed. He was in the debrief, he said. He agreed with the narrative. Judge Grant turned back to Ethan. In that debrief, she said, did you ever once say, I was paged? He stared at the table. Answer out loud, she said. No, he admitted. Did you ever tell them the family's anger was directed at you, not her? She pressed. He shook his head, then forced himself to speak. No, why not? She asked. His jaw clenched. Because... He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because my father was in the room. There it was. The invisible third party, finally spoken. And what does that mean? She asked. Spell it out. He looked at her like she was making him strip, layer by layer. It means, he said slowly, that when he decides how a case is handled, you don't contradict him. Not if you want a career. Silence. It wasn't just fear for himself in his eyes. It was old, rehearsed fear. How many nurses, Judge Grant asked, have you seen handled that way? He swallowed. 2, he said. 3, maybe. Over the years. Complaints always got redirected. Onto people who didn't share your last name, she said. He didn't argue. Mr. Cho, she said, turning back to HR, do you have a copy of the family's original letter? He shifted, guilt practically radiating. Yes, he said. I kept one. Just in case. Bring it, she said. He approached the bench with a single sheet. Handwriting, not printed. The ink slightly smudged at the tear marks. She read it silently. Her face changed, not dramatic, but more human, tired, pained. She looked at Maria. Ms. Reyes, she said. The family wrote, we are grateful to the night nurse, Maria, who tried her best and stayed with our father. Our issue is with the physician who never responded to pages. Maria's knees nearly buckled. They wrote that? She whispered. Double quotes, yes, the judge said. They specifically cleared you? Twice. Tears finally spilled over Maria's cheeks, fast and hot. Then why? She choked. Why did they? Because, Daniel cut in, shame burning his face. Dr. Holly told us, doctors are harder to replace than nurses. Protect the talent, so we did what we were told. All eyes swung back to Ethan. Congratulations, Mr. Holly, Judge Grant said, voice like cold steel. You're officially the talent, his bravado cracked. I didn't make that call, he said. He did. But you let him, she said. You watched a woman lose her entire career for your silence. He looked at Maria. She wasn't glaring. She wasn't even looking at him. She stared at the floor like it had answers. Do you know, Judge Grant went on, what Ms. Reyes's license means to her? He didn't respond. Do you even know, she added, what it would mean for her to be reported to the board? How hard it is to come back from that? The nights she's probably spent replaying every beep on that monitor, wondering if she did something wrong. Her tone stayed low, but it was more cutting than any shout. You didn't just sign a piece of paper, she said. You signed a story. And that story erased her. Ethan's fingers curled into fists. You want to talk about stories? He snapped suddenly. Mine's not exactly a fairy tale either. You think it's easy being his son? He jerked his head toward the empty space where his father should have been. He sends me links to articles about residents who ruined his name, he said. He reminds me every week how many years he's run that department. How many people want my spot? One mistake, he says, and I'm done. Correction, Judge Grant said. One mistake. She nodded toward Maria. For her. For you, it was just Tuesday. The cameras caught every flinch. We are not here to psychoanalyze your childhood, she said. We are here to decide what you owe the woman you helped destroy. She set the letter down with finality. And to decide, she added, eyes narrowing, whether your father's little protection racket inside that hospital needs to meet some people whose badges say investigator instead of MD. She nodded to the clerk. Call in the next witness, she said. The one from risk management. Ethan's head snapped up. What witness? He demanded. The side door opened. A woman in a business casual blazer walked in, clutching a folder like it weighed 100 pounds. Her face was pale, but her jaw was set. State your name and role, Judge Grant said. Asha Patel, she replied. Former risk manager at Harding. I resigned last month. Why? The judge asked. Asha's eyes flicked to Ethan, then to Maria. Because, she said, voice trembling but clear, I was tired of turning doctors' mistakes into nurses' nightmares. Especially when the doctor's last name was Holly. Now ask yourself, if you worked somewhere that rewarded you every time you lied for power, how long before you stopped noticing it was a lie? And what would it take to finally make you walk away? That's exactly what Asha is about to explain, and it's going to blow this case wide open. Asterisk. You understand you're under oath, Ms. Patel? Judge Grant asked. Double quotes, yes, Your Honor. Asha said. Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. What do you want to tell this court? The judge asked. Asha took a breath, anchored her gaze on the bench, not on the rows of scrubs and sharp suits behind her. 3 years ago, she began, I was promoted to risk manager. It was my job to minimize exposure, to protect the hospital from lawsuits. At first that meant tightening protocols, catching charting errors, encouraging better documentation. She swallowed. Then, she continued, a pattern started. Whenever an incident involved certain physicians, especially Annie Hawley, the pressure changed. What kind of pressure? The judge asked. Subtle at first, Asha said. Emails from Dr. Hawley Sr. copying the CEO. Focus on systems. Asha, processes. Don't hang my doctors out to dry. Then more direct. Make sure nursing takes the hit on this. We can train more nurses. We can't manufacture more top surgeons. The nurses in the gallery exchanged bitter looks. It was a language they knew too well. In this particular case, Judge Grant said, what were you told? Asha flipped to a specific page. The morning after the death, she said. I received the family's letter. I read it. It praised Ms. Reyes. It was furious at Dr. Hale's unresponsiveness. I flagged it for peer review. Ethan stared, jaw tight. Within an hour, Asha went on. I got a direct call from Dr. Heta Sr., he said. We are not throwing my son under the bus for a code in the middle of a staffing crisis. Find another angle. Judge Grant's face didn't change, but the room felt the drop in her temperature. Did he mention Ms. Reyes by name? She asked . Yes, Asha said. He said, that night nurse has a history of being emotional. I've heard complaints. Check her charting. There's your story. Maria's eyes filled again. No one ever complained to me, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. They didn't, Asha said quickly, turning to her. I checked. Your file was clean. I told him that. He said, then make it about system failures. Who's easier to replace? My son or an ICU nurse? The bluntness of it made the gallery collectively flinch. Were you ordered, Judge Grant asked, to alter any documents? Asha hesitated. I was told to frame the narrative, she said. To focus on nursing escalation, to downplay the pager log, to omit the family's praise. And did you? The judge asked. I rewrote the draft, Asha admitted, shame reddening her cheeks. I removed the line about Maria staying with the patient. I highlighted delayed escalation, even though your log says she paged 4 times in 9 minutes. I sent it up for approval. To whom? Judge Grant asked. Double quotes, Dr. Howe Sr., Asha said. He added notes. Then I was told to bring it to a debrief with him, HR, and his son. All eyes landed on Ethan again. In that room, Asha continued, I laid out both versions. The original family letter and the adjusted risk summary. I said, if this goes to court, documentation could be challenged. She looked at Ethan. Your father looked at you, she said. He said, Ethan, tell her. Was the nurse solid? Ethan's knuckles whitened. You remember that? She asked him. He nodded, voice barely audible. Yeah, what did you say? Judge Grant pressed. He closed his eyes for a second. Asterisk. I said. He forced out. I don't know. It was chaotic. I couldn't reach anyone. Maybe she should have called sooner. And did you mention your unanswered pages? The judge asked. He shook his head. No. Did you mention the family's praise for her? She continued. No. So in that moment, she said, you handed him the excuse he needed. He didn't try to defend it. Asterisk, I was scared, he said. He was angry. I thought if I took some blame, he'd S&P. So I redirected. Onto the only person in the room without a white coat, she said. He nodded. Shame thick around him like a fog. Asha's voice trembled again. Later, she said, he pulled me aside. He said, good instincts. We can't let the vultures out there smell hall blood. Write it up so the nurse resigns quietly and everyone moves on. And you complied. Judge Grant said, yes, Asha whispered. I told myself it was one case. One nurse. That she'd find another job. Meanwhile, I preserved the institution. She looked directly at Maria. I watched you walk out with that resignation form, she said. I told myself I was just doing my job. But you looked like something had been ripped out of you. Maria swallowed a sob. I have 2 kids, Asha said. That night, I went home and watched them sleep, and I couldn't stop seeing your face. The next time it happened, it was another nurse. Different unit, different doctor, same pattern. After the 3rd time, I couldn't do it anymore. So you resigned, the judge said. Yes, she replied. But I kept copies, because I knew one day, someone like you would need to see how deep it went. She held up the folder. In here, she said, are 3 incident reports. All involving doctors who bring in big money. All redirected onto nurses. All with Dr. Hale's comments in the margins. Judge Grant took the folder, flipping through quickly, her lips pressed into a line. Mr. Cho, she said to HR, does hospital leadership know she kept these? Daniel shook his head. No, Your Honor. If they did, she'd have been sued already. Some in the back chuckled darkly. Not a joke, the judge said. But noted. She turned back to the defendant's table. Mr. Hale, she said, do you understand the difference between a complicated system and a corrupt one? He frowned. Systems are complicated. Things get messy. That doesn't mean a complicated system, she said. Misfires sometimes, then corrects when evidence appears. A corrupt system sees evidence, then bends it to protect itself. She lifted the family's handwritten letter, then the polished, lawyered-up incident report. This, she said, shaking the letter, is grief and thanks and anger, all mixed together, human, messy. She held up the report. This, she said, is corruption wrapped in professionalism, neat, precise, deadly. She set them side by side, and right here, she added, nodding at Asha and Daniel, we have two people who helped write it, then chose, eventually, to stop. She turned fully to Ethan. You? She said, you're still deciding. He bristled. I'm here, aren't I? I could have refused to show. Dad tried to. He cut himself off. Go on, the judge said. Dad tried to what? Get it dismissed, he muttered. Call in favors. He said the show isn't real court anyway. Just TV. A few people in the back laughed, knowing exactly which show he meant. And yet, she said, you're on record. Under oath. In front of how many people? Her eyes flicked to the cameras. More than your father's boardroom holds. I promise you that. He inhaled slowly. What do you want from me? He asked. I've already admitted I messed up. You want me to hate him? To disown him? I want you to stop hiding behind him, she replied. There's a difference. She pointed at Maria. You watched her get erased to save your skin, she said. Now you have an opportunity to reverse that. To say, clearly, it was me. Not her, in a way that cannot be buried in some file. Cabinet. He stared at Maria. Her eyes met his this time. They weren't forgiving, but they were listening. You don't get to decide what he does with this, the judge said. You only get to decide who you are when you speak. His throat worked. I ignored the page, he said, the words ripping out like confession. I silenced my pager because I was exhausted and I didn't want to go back in. I told myself if it was serious, they'd call again. They did. I still didn't go. I gambled with his father's life so I could sleep an extra hour. And I won. He winced. Until now, he added. The room pulsed with a kind of horror that wasn't about malpractice anymore, that it was about humanity at its laziest. And when he died, Judge Grant said, You helped bury the evidence. Yes, he said. I let my father rewrite it. I signed what he put in front of me. I watched them aim all that pain at her. And I didn't say a word. Maria's breath hitched. The truth hurt more than the lies. Why now? She asked quietly. Why tell the truth now? He looked at her, expression cracking open. Because, he said, for the first time, he's not in the room talking for me. And because I saw your face when she read that letter. The part where the family thanked you. And I realized that should have been your story, not mine. The gallery absorbed it like a blow. Judge Grant didn't rush in to fix the moment. She let it sting. Then she sat up straighter. Good, she said. Now that the truth is on the record, we move to what the law can actually do about it. She stacked the papers neatly. Double quotes, Ms. Reyes, she said. You lost your job, your benefits, your reputation. Perhaps offers. Perhaps sleep. Maria nodded, eyes glistening. What else? The judge asked. Tell me what this cost you that isn't on a spreadsheet. Maria laughed weakly. My son, she said. He's 8. He used to tell everyone, my mommy saves people in the hospital. After I lost my job, he heard my sister whisper that I'd killed someone. He asked me, did you make a mistake bigger than mine? Tears spilled again, hot and humiliated. I stopped applying for jobs, she said. Because every time I filled in reason for leaving, my hands froze. I couldn't write the lie. I couldn't write the truth. So, I wrote nothing. She wiped her face. I picked up shifts at a diner nights, she said. Because I couldn't walk back onto a ward knowing everyone had seen my name on that report. The weight of it settled over everyone, salaries. Ego, power, all suddenly so small next to a mother wiping tables at 3 a.m. instead of checking drips. This, Judge Grant said quietly, is what your father calls minimizing exposure, Mr. Hawley. He didn't argue. He looked gutted. Now, she said, taking up her pen, we'll see what happens when exposure goes the other way. If you think money and titles should be enough to shield a family like the Hales from fallout, stop watching now. Because the next thing this judge does doesn't just hit their bank account, it hits the one place they've never been forced to feel anything. Their conscience. Asterisk. Judge Grant took her time writing. Every stroke of ink felt deliberate. Final. When she looked up, the room stilled. Ms. Reyes, she said, this court finds that your forced resignation was the result of a knowingly false narrative created to protect a physician and his family's reputation. She glanced at Maria. You were not negligent, she continued. You did not ignore your patient. You did not falsify records. The family's own letter and the logs clear you. That needs to be said out loud, in public, where the lie lived. Maria's shoulders shook with a mix of relief and grief. Mr. Cho, the judge said, turning to Achar, you're still at Harding? Yes, Your Honor, he said. Not for long, someone whispered. You, she said, ignoring the aside, will ensure a written correction is placed in Ms. Reyes's HR file. Her departure is to be marked as involuntary due to organizational decision, with no reference to clinical performance. Yes, he said quickly. Absolutely. And she added, a formal letter from the hospital clearing her fault in this incident will be drafted, signed by your CEO and delivered to her and the nursing board. Daniel nodded. Shame and relief tangled. Now, she said, on to damages. She looked back at her pad, double quotes. Ms. Reyes worked at Harding for 7 years, she said. Her salary, benefits, and earning potential in that specialty have been severely impacted. She's taken lower paying work. She's suffered emotional distress. She looked at Maria. Do you have an estimate of lost wages? She asked. Maria cleared her throat. My union rep helped me, she said. With overtime, differential, benefits, about $60,000 this year. If I can't get back into ICU. More, Judge Grant nodded. This court, she said, awards you $80,000 in damages. A soft gasp. $40,000, she continued, will be paid by Harding Memorial Hospital for their role in enforcing and benefiting from a false narrative. She turned toward Ethan. And $40,000, she said, will be paid by you, Mr. Hawley. His head jerked up. Me? I'm a resident. You went into medicine with a trust fund under you, she said. You told us you own a condo and a car your salary alone could not sustain. You bragged about your father paying off your loans before you finished your first year. Her eyes narrowed. If you can afford to coast on his money, she said, you can afford to spend some of it making right what you helped him destroy. He opened his mouth. Close to asterisk. How long do I have? He asked, voice thin. 6 months, she said. Or you can work something out with Ms. Reyes, but it comes from you. Not a quiet gift from Daddy. I want you to feel every transfer. He nodded slowly. Yes, Your Honor. And that's not all, she went on. Money can repair some damage. It cannot repair trust. That requires time and behavior. She tapped her pen. You will complete 150 hours of community service, she ordered. Half of them in nonprofit clinics that serve uninsured patients. The other half shadowing nurses, actually shadowing, not standing in a doorway, in a facility that will take you. He looked surprised. You still want me around patients? He asked. I want you, she said, to see what care looks like when there is no press release attached. When the only reward is someone's grandmother getting one more day. She turned to Maria. Asterisk. If there comes a day, she said, when you are ready and willing and in a position to precept, I would strongly suggest Harding or anywhere assign residents like him to you to learn what responsibility actually looks like. Maria gave a watery half smile. Maybe one day, she said. Not yet. Fair, the judge said. She shifted her gaze to Asha. You, she said, took part in wrong, and then helped expose it. The law could come down harder on you, but it also recognized whistleblowers. Asha's shoulders sagged. I'm not punishing you today, Judge Grant said. You already punished yourself by walking away from a career you were good at. But if, when investigators come asking for full cooperation, you will give it. Yes, Your Honor, Asha said. Gladly. Mr. Cho, she added, the same goes for you. You helped. Then you helped clean. That earns you scrutiny and an opportunity. Use both wisely. He nodded. Double quotes. And now, she said, we address the invisible man in this room. She didn't have to say his name. Everyone knew she meant Dr. Richard Holloway, Chief of Surgery, she said. Respected, feared, a man who told his staff that doctors are diamonds and nurses are replaceable coal. A man who weaponized fear of losing careers to make good people lie. Her voice hardened. Every email, every margin note, every directive bearing his name is being forwarded to the state medical board and hospital accreditation authorities. She said, if there is any justice left in that building, he will answer to them. Ethan flinched. He'll blame me, he said suddenly. He'll say I sold him out to save myself. Judge Grant studied him. Did you? She asked. He thought about it. Yes and no, he said. I'm trying to save what's left of me that isn't him. She nodded once. That, she said, is the first wise thing I've heard you say. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Ms. Reyes, the judge said, once the hospital clears your record, will you seek to return to nursing? Maria hesitated. I don't know, she said honestly. I miss it so much it hurts. But I'm afraid. Afraid the next Halle will be waiting to make me their story again. Judge Grant's expression softened. Fear after betrayal is normal, she said. What you do with it is what matters. She looked between Maria and Ethan. In this court, she said, we don't decide if you ever step foot in a hospital again. We decide whether the truth about what happened that night follows you. Or him. She turned to Ethan one last time. Stand, she ordered. He did. Face her. She said. He turned toward Maria. Her eyes were tired but steady. Say it, the judge instructed. What exactly did you let everyone believe? That you know now is a lie? He swallowed. That you killed him, he said, the words dragging. That you were negligent. That you were the weak link. When really, he exhaled. When really I was the one who didn't answer. I was the weak link. And you did everything right. Her lip trembled. And what are you going to do about it? She asked. The next time your pager buzzes at 3 a.m.? He didn't hesitate this time. Answer it, he said. Or hand it to someone who will if I'm truly unable. And never again. Pretend a nurse is disposable just because my last name isn't. The judge's eyes held both of them. Good, she said. Now say it so everyone out there hears it too. She nodded toward the cameras. He looked straight into the lens. Nurses are not shields, he said. They're the reason residents like me don't kill more people. I forgot that when I chose myself over a patient. I won't forget it again. Judge Grant let the words echo. Then, finally, she lifted her gavel. This court stands for one thing, she said. That no badge, no white coat, no famous last name gets to rewrite reality without a fight. Today reality wins. The gavel came down. Shockwaves you won't see on any heart monitor ran through more than one hospital hallway after that. Episode aired. But before you click away, ask yourself something hard. In your world, your job, your home, your friendships, are you Maria? Carrying hurt you didn't earn? Are you Asha or Daniel, looking away until you can't anymore? Or are you a little closer to Ethan than you'd like to admit? Because that answer matters more than any verdict. Asterisk, when the cameras cut and the courtroom began to empty, something interesting happened. No one rushed to Ethan. Not the nurses, obviously. Not Asha, not Daniel. Even the few residents who'd shown up out of curiosity slipped out the side door. Eyes down, white coat suddenly feeling heavier. He stood there. Papers in his hand, looking oddly small in a room he'd walked into like a stage. Maria moved toward the aisle, clutching her corrected letter like a lifeline. For a second, they crossed paths. He stepped back automatically. She paused. They stared at each other in the strange quiet that exists after a storm. When you're not sure if it's really over, Miss Reyes, he said. She looked at him, measuring. I meant it, he said. About the pages. About all of it. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I didn't want it to sound like something I said because a judge made me. She studied him. You know what I kept hearing in my head for weeks? She asked. Your voice in that debrief? The part where you said, I don't know. It was chaotic. Maybe she should have escalated. He flinched. That one sentence, she said, became my whole story overnight. You don't undo that with one day in court. He nodded. I know. But, she added, surprising herself, you did something today I didn't think you were capable of. You stood in a room your father doesn't control, and didn't run. He let out a bitter half-laugh. Felt like running. Didn't, she said. They held each other's gaze for a beat longer. If you ever make it to attending, she said, and you see some young nurse getting set up the way I was, and you stay silent? She let the threat hang. I won't, he said. I can't, not after this. Not after seeing the cost from your side. Good, she said simply. Then maybe something useful came out of him raising you? Her eyes flicked toward the invisible figure of his father. He nodded, throat tight. Take care of your son, he said awkwardly. The way you wanted to take care of all of ours. She almost smiled at that. I always did, she replied. That's why I took this case. They parted, not as friends, not healed, but with something like a fragile ceasefire between them. On the bench, Judge Grant stacked files into neat piles. Her clerk leaned in. You really think he'll change? The clerk asked quietly. The judge paused. Maybe, she said. Maybe not. That's his test, not mine. Then why the therapy? The community hours? The clerk pressed. Why not just money done next case? Judge Grant set the family letter on top of the stack. Because, she said, if the only thing we ever take from people like him is money, all they learn is to be more careful with receipts. I'd rather he lose some sleep. She looked out at the now empty benches, and I'd rather everyone watching at home, she added, ask themselves why it takes a TV judge to do what systems built for justice won't. Her words never made it to air. But if you're still here, listening in this story, they're for you, because here's the real outro, the one that sits underneath all the drama. This story wasn't just about a nurse and a resident. It was about what we decide is acceptable when people we benefit from do ugly things. It's easy to point at Dr. Hollis Sr. and say, monster. Easy to point at Ethan and say, coward. But the truth is, the Hales only existed this long because so many people around them decided their comfort or paycheck mattered more than someone else's truth. Asha told herself. She was just doing her job. Daniel told himself. He was just following orders. Even Maria, for a terrifying 48 hours, almost told herself, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I am who they say I am. Every time a lie like that almost wins, it's because not enough people push back. So what do you do with a story like this? You could watch it, get that satisfying rush when the arrogant one gets humbled. Then scroll to the next video. You could pause and ask, where in my world is someone's story being rewritten to protect someone with more power? Am I the one being rewritten? Or the one holding the pen? When was the last time I stayed quiet because speaking up might cost me something? A job, a friendship, an easier life? Asterisk, if you relate to Maria, maybe this is your sign to start fighting for your name on paper, not just in whispers. Keep records. Find allies. Don't let one powerful person's version become the only version. If you see yourself in Asha or Daniel, sitting in rooms where decisions are twisted, this is your reminder that just doing your job can still mean doing the wrong thing. You're not powerless. One saved copy, one email forwarded to the right place, one refusal to sign can tilt the scale. And if uncomfortably, you see a little of Ethan in yourself, used to advantages, used to other people absorbing the impact of your mistakes, the lesson is hardest but clearest. Empathy isn't a feeling. It's a decision. The next time your pager goes off, literally or metaphorically, what you do in that moment will say more about who you are than any apology you give later. You may never stand in front of a TV judge. Your life may never be turned into a script. But every day, you walk through your own courtroom, the people you work with, live with, serve, or let are silently keeping score. One day, their stories about you will outlive your job title. Make sure they sound more like, they fought for me when it mattered, and less like, they let me take the hit so they could sleep an extra hour. If you want more stories that don't just entertain, but force you to see yourself, the good, the bad, the almost, stay with us. Subscribe. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this with someone who still thinks a big name or a white coat makes them untouchable. Asterisk. Because if there's one thing this courtroom keeps proving, it's this. Power can hide the truth for a while. But when the right person finally says, state your name for the record, the truth always eventually answers.